Getting back to the NFL in this segment. NFL draft now, a little less than a week behind us in terms of round one here. We've talked a lot about the surprises in round one, namely Michael Penix. We've talked about the quarterback fits. I wanted to bring on somebody who would do way more in terms of actually breaking down the scheme and what these offenses are going to look like. Nobody better than my friend Chase Daniel, a longtime NFL quarterback, now NFL Network Analyst. Chase, appreciate you being here. Let's dive right into this here. So we talked, for months, right? Caleb Williams to the Bears. Everyone in the world knew that's what was going to happen. They've built this thing up over time, going back to you bring in Shane Waldron as the OC, you sign DeAndre Swift, you trade for Keenan Allen. Now you bring in Rome Odunze to the mix as well. When it boils down to it, we know what the play style was for Caleb at USC. What is this Bears offense going to look like?
Well, it's going to look completely different than probably most Shane Waldron style offenses that he ran with the Rams and the Seahawks, because they do have those weapons. And I know you didn't mention DJ Moore, and DJ Moore, quite honestly, might be the number one out of all those guys. I love what they did adding Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen, I played with Keenan Allen for 2 years. I know he's getting up in age. There's nobody better in the slot. Like you said, DeAndre Swift, everyone in that aspect, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. It's going to be very multiple. I think Shane Waldron is going to morph this offense into what Caleb Williams does well. And what does Caleb Williams do well? Well, have you ever watched a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes play? If 1 and 2 is not open, he's going to take off. They're going to work scramble drill quite a bit. They're going to be in a lot of shotgun alignments. They're going to do some RPOs. You know, when you actually go back and watch the 2022 USC film with Caleb Williams, you see a guy, in my opinion, that is thriving in the offense, didn't throw a lot of interceptions, didn't take a lot of sacks because he had talent around him. When you go to last year's USC offense, I'm watching it as an NFL eye, and I'm looking and I'm saying, what in the world is going on? Because it's really hard to go and understand the reads and the concepts. And I think that's what Shane Waldron and co are going to be able to get out of Caleb, is they have to make sure that he has an answer for every problem and get away from that hero ball type stuff he had to play last year because his offensive line was so poor.
Do you think, as somebody who's been a quarterback in the league, you've seen plenty of young guys come in, I don't want to say can you coach that out of them, because the escape artist play style is a positive. I mean, it's his superpower on the field, but it's also something that I know from talking to people. There were times where the USC coaches would get frustrated because so much was happening outside the structure of the offense. Can you rein in a guy like that without cluttering his mind and slowing him down and taking away what he does best?
You're going to have to. I mean, quite honestly, because if you don't, then he's going to be in a lot of trouble. And look, at the NFL level, everyone is good. They were playing some tape in 2023 and some guys in 2023 that I'm watching like, you are so much better than this guy. And look, he's not going to have that in the NFL, in that division, in the NFC North, because quite frankly, it's stacked. And I'm just looking forward to him, like, seeing the progression on his ceiling and what it can be, because he has to be sure to go out there and understand that, hey, a throwaway is not a bad play. Quick game, throwing a little stick route, a 6-yard stick route to a tight end, it's not a bad play. A punt is not a bad play. And I think that's what you saw from him last year, is because the lack of talent surrounding him at USC was, quite honestly, not as great as it should have been with Lincoln Riley as the head coach. He has a wealth of talent with the Bears. I think that's what you need to coach. If I'm the quarterback coach, if I'm Shane Waldron, that's what I'm coaching. Hey, just take what's there, do your thing in the pocket, because you don't want to take the stinger away. But you also have to understand that a throwaway and a punt in the NFL, it's not a bad play.
All right, let's go to number 2. The Commanders, there was talk very early on. They did get calls about moving. It became apparent they were not moving. But there was real discussion whether it was going to be Drake May, maybe J.J. McCarthy, or Jaden Daniels. I got the sense, Chase, in talking to all the coaches, the scouts, the GMs I do, that people saw Cliff Kingsbury, what he's done historically, and really the guy who fit that was Jaden Daniels. This is not, though, Kyler Murray. They're not carbon copies of one another. They can do some of the same things. When you think about what this offense is going to look like with Jaden Daniels, what does he do well, and what are they going to have him do in Washington?
Well, I love Jaden Daniels. Like, in my opinion, he was like right up there in my quarterback rankings with Caleb Williams, because what he does so well is he goes through progressions at a pace that I really have not seen an NFL quarterback coming out of college do in a really long time. And what does that mean? Hey, he understands how to get from the first to the second to the third. I've seen him, Tom, get through the fourth and fifth progressions in a college offense and throw touchdowns to the running back on a check down versus quarters coverage, where that's the only place to go with the ball. So he is a really bright mind, and I really do think his ceiling is higher than Kyler Murray in this offense. And that's why I love the fit. And that's why I think they were really sold on Jaden Daniels the entire time, was because of Cliff Kingsbury. It's not a really hard offense to learn, although Jaden's really smart. It's very just, hey, here's a half field read. Here's a half field read. Here is a full field progression. It's very quarterback friendly. And obviously they're going to use his legs. I think that's not being talked about enough. I watched a film the day before the NFL draft just to get a bearing on who he was as a player against Florida. He ran for 238 yards.
Yeah.
Like it is really, really crazy to see that. And he really is, though, a combination of both a pocket passer and a runner. I think that's what the Commanders really liked about him. The only thing, Tom, he's got to gain some weight. He's got to get his weight up. He looked really fragile in college. He took some massive hits. If he's going to be running that much, you cannot have that happen in the NFL.
That mashup that has been floating around social media of Jaden Daniels taking hits set to the Looney Tunes theme is one of the funniest things that I saw the entire pre-draft process. But it is true. He takes some absolutely hellacious hits. He was like $170 in his days at Arizona State. He was up to like 190, I want to say, in the spring 2 years ago. So he has put on like 20 pounds. The question is, he's this narrow frame type of dude. Yeah. If you keep doing that, regardless how much weight you put on, if you take those types of hits at the NFL level, whether you're Anthony Richardson, who's 6'5", and 240, or Cam Newton, who's 6'5", like eventually that stuff's going to add up on your body.
Totally. And that's the biggest thing that NFL quarterbacks and NFL coaches and NFL trainers talk about. The best ability is availability. And that's what he has to understand. Get down, know when the journey's over. It sounds cliche, and guess what? It is. But it still withstands the test of time. You can't take hits and be able to play 17, maybe 18 games like Roger Goodell said is coming.
Drake May, who was talked about, I think at least in the conversation with Caleb Williams, if you go back a year ago, prior to the last year of college, ended up being the third guy. Jaden Daniels, to his credit, did everything, moved ahead of him. There were teams, though, that liked Drake as the second one, and there were multiple teams that were willing to trade up for him, even though it sounds like coming from North Carolina, Chase, like other North Carolina quarterbacks, it's such a simplistic type of an offense. There's a big growth process he has to go through. So if you're New England, and in all likelihood, let's be honest, you're probably thinking Jacoby Brissett is our week one starter. But how do you bring Drake May along? How does he, accuracy-wise and otherwise, get better?
Look, I think Drake May was great, and I know the Minnesota Vikings really liked him, really wanted him to go up and get them. It just didn't play out. New England wanted to stick and pick. Obviously, you guys reported it. You guys did an amazing job, by the way, on NFL draft coverage, so thanks for that. And I just think with Drake, I had him as my fifth-ranked quarterback. And not necessarily because of the talent, just because of the inexperience and the lack of weapons on offense. That offensive line at UNC was pretty poor. It is a very simple offense. If you look at it and really break it down, really half the offense is him looking left or right and taking off down the middle of the field, which showed his athleticism. And he's a big country dude. Like, when you meet him and when you talk to him and when you shake his hand, he sort of gives me Phillip Rivers vibes, the country boy vibe, and also like just size. He's the closest really to Justin Herbert that I've seen. I played with Justin for 2 years. He's a big dude, and I think that's what the Patriots understand. That's why they went out. They paid so much for Jacoby Brissett, because I do think, I'm with you, I do think Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter day one. In my opinion, the reason I had Drake at fifth on my rankings, he needed a year or two, the Jordan Love plan, to really understand the innards of an NFL program, an NFL facility, just the way to work, everything like that. His potential's off the charts. You just have to really believe in him, which New England taking him number 3, they really do.
Can he move like Justin Herbert? There's not a lot of those really tall types of quarterbacks. I had one scout tell me, he'd seen the Justin Herbert comparisons. He said, I think he moves a little bit more like Brock Osweiler, where he's a tall pocket passer, but he's not as nimble and athletic as Justin. How much of what Justin does from a mobility perspective can this guy do?
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, I think it's pretty much on par. Like when I was with Justin, he's a lot faster. He's a very long strider. Obviously, he's a tall dude. But with Drake, I do think he's not as shifty. I do think straight line speed is fast. If he gets going, you watch some of his highlights. I mean, everyone saw the highlight, I think, against Pittsburgh, where he's up and to the left and he threw it left-handed outside of the pocket. Like, just that's what he has. He has that playmaking ability in him. He just has to learn how to read an NFL defense, has to learn to go through progressions. That's not a slight on him. He just is very inexperienced, hadn't started a ton of games, and everyone obviously knows the UNC quarterback pedigree isn't great right now, so hopefully he's the mold that can fix it.
He is definitely a different guy than Sam Howell. Sam Howell is one of the most quiet, introverted people. Yeah. That hurt him, honestly, in the pre-draft process. He slides to the 5th round in part because people were like, a little bit more juice. Drake is like, you talk to coaches who met with him and they're like, whoa, he came in with a lot of energy. He wants to tell you every piece of tape he's ever watched here. Not in a bad way, but he's a little bit more high strung. He's one of the youngest guys in this draft as well. It'll be fascinating to see how that one plays out. All right, let's get to another guy who I guess we're going to say is not going to play anytime soon, but when the Falcons, after paying Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, take Michael Penix at number 8, honestly, Chase, I don't know exactly how this plays out. I think we have to be ready for every different scenario, including one where at some point over the next calendar year here, we're talking about is Kirk Cousins getting traded in year 2 of that massive contract. Michael Penix was, I think, a polarizing guy talking to coaches and scouts. There were coaches who really liked him. I thought people who had him number 2. I had people who had him number 7 behind Spencer Rattler. And a big part of that was he just doesn't move very much. He's a strict pocket passer. It's got to be clean for him. With him in that Zach Robinson offense that's coming from the Rams here, and knowing kind of the unique development scenario he's in, what do you foresee with Michael Penix in Atlanta?
Well, I think he's going to have to sit and learn. I had him ranked as the 3 or 4 guy. There was a tie, in my opinion, with J.J. McCarthy, who we'll get to next. But with Michael Penix, like, when we did NFL Total Access, the post-game show, first day of the draft, obviously that was the big storyline. And I sort of disagreed with it at the time because you literally paid your guy $100 million guaranteed, and it's the honeymoon phase. I loved your quote that you said about that, which was great.
Went viral.
And now, yeah, I mean, it's true though. You're cheating on your wife in the honeymoon phase, and I think Kirk didn't really love it. I feel like Kirk really didn't appreciate that they called him on the clock, didn't even give him a heads up. But when Atlanta understood that they could get a guy like this, like when you just truly break down the film, it is mesmerizing because he, in my opinion, has the strongest arm in the draft. You said he can't move well. He really only ran for like 13 yards last year. But he ran a 4.4 40. They just wrapped him in bubble wrap because of the knee injuries, but he hasn't had really any injuries for 2 years. That was back at Indiana. So I do like the fit here, and the Zach Robinson fit is interesting because they are going to run that under center play action jet sweep motion. Like I played with Zach Robinson in a lot of different camps growing up through high school, in college. We played him at OSU. Like he is a really, really smart man. I'm excited that Raheem Morris brought him in. But yeah, the Michael Penix situation, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays sooner rather than later. And not saying this year, I think this is a sit and wait year. But in reality, the contract is you really guaranteed Kirk Cousins 2 years. Does he get 2 years? I don't know.
My concern, I keep seeing people saying, oh, Kirk Cousins, who cares about his feelings? It's not about feelings. He's got 100 million reasons to be fine with whatever. This is about the environment that you're creating there. I mean, he's on stage hyping up the crowd at the draft party, and an hour later you're calling saying, hey, I know you just got here 6 weeks ago, but we're already drafting your replacement. Chase, you spent a long time in the NFL as a backup quarterback. I remember being at the game where you took over for, I believe it was Mitch Trubisky in Chicago, and the crowd at that point went wild when you're coming in the game. Of course, you're Chase Daniel, who wouldn't be excited about it, but you weren't even the number 8 overall pick. When your guy, Zach Robinson, is a first-time play caller with a new quarterback, new weapons coming in, and is just trying to get things up to speed here, nobody was going to be chanting for Taylor Heineke. Nobody in the crowd was going to be going, we put him in. Michael Penix, if this doesn't start fast, people will be chanting for Michael Penix. And there might be locker room questions. There certainly will be media questions perpetually here. I have no question Kirk Cousins, even coming off the Achilles, is going to go there and play at a high level just because that's what he's done throughout the course of his career. But you've changed everything around it, and you've just totally turned it from this is our guy, the new age, we're all in. But we also got this other guy that we just used the number 8 pick on.
You're creating a distraction that, quite honestly, didn't need to be created. I think Michael Penix is worth the 8th pick. I really do, if you just look at his film. But like you said, it's going to be an interesting distraction within that locker room. And I've been in some situations where it's a little bit sticky. I think that going in, knowing the character of Michael Penix, knowing Kirk Cousins personally, like it's just time to get to work. And knowing Zach, they're going to have a really good culture around it. But it does bring up the fact, not only from the fan situation, Tom, but also in that locker room. If Kirk goes out and isn't playing really well the first 10 games of the year, you got this shiny new toy sitting on the bench that probably is talking to guys in the locker room and trying to get better and trying to learn, staying after practice throwing, and Michael Penix and just showing the work ethic. Like, that's a tricky situation for Raheem Morris in the first year of his new regime there, especially with a first-year play caller like you mentioned with Zach Robinson.
J.J. McCarthy ends up not going at number 4 or 5, which is a trade up. Does not go 6 to the Giants. The Vikings end up moving up one spot, taking him at number 10. This is the one. There's a lot of good fits here, I think. Chase, especially Caleb Williams going to Chicago, makes total sense. Jaden with that offense. J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. If you want to talk about a team that, granted, they tried to trade up for Drake May, but they did really like J.J. McCarthy. And J.J. McCarthy in the process really liked the Vikings. This, to me, seems like with the weaponry that he's got there with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays, I couldn't think of a better situation.
There's no doubt. And you could make the case, and I am going to make the case for the Vikings being the absolute best situation for any of the rookie quarterbacks because of Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, TJ Hockenson, Kevin O'Connell as the play caller. That scheme is next level. He's going to be able to hit the ground running. Now, it is a difficult scheme and a difficult offense to pick up. And obviously, you know, they're saying, hey, he's going to compete with Sam Darnold. I do think right now that the best of any situation other than Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels to play week 1, it is J.J. McCarthy. I know they paid Sam Darnold $10 million, but when you look at J.J., and you break down his film, it was an interesting sort of breakdown scenario for me over the 2 months, because when you look at the third down situations and you look at the passing yards and you look at the inexperience, really only played 1,600 snaps in college, which is really low. It's hard to understand, like, what he can do at the next level. Obviously, the pro day was one of the best pro days that I have ever seen, and the pre-draft process was really good. He's a rah-rah leader type guy, but when you do the tape and you break it down, Michigan really didn't need him to win some games last year. And so he was sort of, I don't want to say wrapped in bubble wrap, but he was sort of held back a little bit from some of his potential. And I've been on record, and I'm going to say it again right here, is I just don't know in the NFL on 3rd and 13, when you need to throw a dagger route versus man-to-man coverage with 2 types of zone pressures right at you and in your face, can you stand in the pocket? Can you deliver a big boy throw over the numbers accurately with a guy trailing with 6 inches of separation? I hadn't seen that out of him. So I think that's the biggest issue, not issue, but that's the biggest question mark with him is, can he do it? Can he actually learn the offense in training camp? Can he get a head start with the weapons that he has? He's not going to be asked to do a lot if he is going to start, but it's the most intriguing prospect to me, I think.
I love that you brought up the pro day because, I mean, I can think of very few occasions where when I talked to, and there were a ton of coaches and scouts there because Michigan had like 80 guys in this draft, but everybody said, man, that was unbelievable for him to throw on air. I mean, one head coach said to me, he goes, I didn't know he had that type of horsepower. So to watch him live, how the ball comes out of his hand, that definitely helped him. One more I want to get to here, Chase. We're talking to Chase Daniel, longtime NFL quarterback, now NFL Network analyst. Bo Nix to Denver. That one might have been of the, you know, outside of Caleb Williams, that might have been the most popular one where everyone I talked to in the league was like, oh yeah, Bo Nix to Denver. Sean Payton's guy, coach's kid, 61 starts, will do exactly what he tells him to do. When you think Bo Nix in Sean Payton's offense, what do you see?
Well, it's probably the only rookie quarterback of the group that could handle that Sean Payton offense. I was with Sean and Sean's offense for 5 years and another 2 years with offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. So I know that offense inside and out. It is very wordy. It is very difficult to pick up. They took the experience factor. And I thought personally at the time it was a little bit of a reach to go 12. But when you have your guy out there for the future and quite honestly for the present, if you look at the depth chart of the Broncos quarterback room, it makes all the sense in the world. It's sort of crazy that he's quarterback 6 in this draft, but he's taken 12 overall. Every other pick in the first 12 picks was a quarterback with 14 straight offensive players. So it just tells you a little bit of the depth of the offense. He's extremely bright. He's a smart quarterback. And talking with the Broncos and talking with some guys that I know very personally in that room, in that decision room, they just really love that he was a competitor, that he was really bright, that he was really like good at underneath throws, because a lot of that Sean Payton offense is, and it was hard to evaluate because when you look at Bo Nix, 30% of his throws at Oregon this past year were at or behind the line of scrimmage. And obviously you saw that quote. If you didn't, Sean Payton said, hey, let's go into our analytics department. Let's take all those throws out. And he was still the most accurate passer. He still had the highest yards per attempt. So he can air it out when needed. It's going to be fascinating to watch this in training camp. If they can get him up to speed and dialed in to go in and start in a division with Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, it's going to be difficult to see.
Chase, phenomenal stuff. And before we let you go, I mentioned that I was at that game where the crowd at Soldier Field was chanting for you to take over for Mitch Trubisky and went wild. I believe we actually have a photo of me interviewing you on the field after the game. That look on my face right there was, man, Chase Daniel, the future of the Bears right there. That's a moment right there, huh?
Dude, young Tom right there.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah, that was the Minnesota Vikings game. We had the throwback on. That was a fun game, man. Look at that though. Look at you with the hair, no beard, just nice, cleanly shaved. Look, I love that. That.
I have aged poorly. You look exactly the same. Chase, Thanks a lot for the time, man. Appreciate it. Let's do it again.
All right, guys. Appreciate you.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.